When you are, John. No rush. When you're ready.
Okay, yeah. I've got to apologise. My fellow layout chaps are all otherwise engaged, and they're the ones who are building the damn layout. So I've got very little idea.
We'll tell them off. Don't worry about that.
No, yeah. I think, as you probably some of you know, we had about I think we had 10 good years with Abbey Road, and we sold it back in 2015, believe it or not. It was that long ago. And we did build another layout, but it was we called it Abbey Park, and we took it out twice, but the boards were too heavy. They started to warp. I won't say who constructed them, but he does feel really embarrassed about it. And the joints were hopeless, and it was too long. We made the ball 6 foot long, so they become quite unmanageable, really. And it was too complicated, so we basically scrapped it. We stripped it, and took the parts off of it. And Bob Farrell, Howard, Roger, and well, the three of them actually are building the new one. Bob Farrell's built the boards, and they're 4 foot boards. I think 3 4 foot boards that make the scenic section, so 12-foot scenic section, and 2 5 foot boards that make the end coffins, as we call them, that like where you can turn the trains, but of course underground trains you don't have to turn around. And it's going to be called Carlton Vale, and basically it's come on quite well. I haven't really got any pictures to show you, I'm afraid, because as I say, the boys have let me down there. But yeah, we reckon within a year or so it should be ready for exhibitions, and of course we've got lots of stock, and there we are. It'll be probably a decent replacement for Abbey Road, much in the same vein, really, the same sort of length, very simple in terms of layout, operation, but idea is to keep the punters amused, which is what it's all about, of course. I think probably most of you with exhibitions, you realise that most people, their attention span is about 30 seconds to a minute. And if you're lucky, if someone's really interested, they'll be a bit longer than that. And then you get the odd ones, of course, who you have to go and hide the train in the tunnel, because otherwise they'll be with you all day. But there we are. What I was also, if anyone's got any questions on the Lula, happy to cover them. I have got a few pictures of Abbey Road, if you'd like to see them, from the various magazine shoots that were done over the years. Most of them quite by professional photographers. I'll give you a little
yeah, do that, John.
Yeah, I'll give you a little show of some of them. I'll give you some of the Hornby magazine ones, which were done. They were quite tastefully done. Here we go. Just wait for it to warm up. Give me a thumbs up, Paul, when you can see it. It's coming through the end of the tunnel. There we go.
Not yet.
No, let me.
We can only see your gallery. We can't see the.
Oh, right, it's very slow. Let me do that again. Right, here we go.
Yeah.
Better?
Yeah.
This was a classic shot. In fact, the photographer did this he did it without his tripod, because the boards were all disconnected. This was obviously the entrance to the tunnel, which is right at the edge of one of the boards. And the tunnel linings, I used an old plastic crochet mat, like a crochet grid, and they looked quite effective. And you can just see the slight gradient up towards Abbey Road and the 38 stock trains. These were all done, I can't remember the photographer, but these were all done for Hornby magazine back in the day. And
what do you make of the new Bachmann or EFE motorised announcement, John?
Well, funny enough, funny you say that. I know it was coming because, of course, for on the back of this, as many of you might know, I ran a business on the back of it. I didn't intend to, but because so many people kept asking me where I got the trains from and how I motorised them and that, I was motorising EFE trains and putting new bogies on them for about 20 years, which has proved quite lucrative, to be honest. But when Frank went, EFE went into administration in 2016, I bought a lot of stock off him that he cleared for cash. And I knew at the time that, hang on, I'm going to stop this share because it's gone a bit AWOL. I knew at the time that it was Bachmann buying it would eventually mean that they do something with it. And about a year ago, a neighbour of mine who's in the Bachmann Collectors Club sent me that message that said, yeah, we're going to release the motorised version, which is obviously due later this year. But that was always on my radar because people said, are you surprised? But I said, well, no, it's the logical thing to do, isn't it? Because the bodies, they've got a lot of the tooling already, and it would have been a relatively cheap job to motorise it because Bachmann have obviously got the means to do that. So over the last year, I managed to sell, it was quite a deliberate plan. I think I sold about £25,000 worth of this EFE that I had, which effectively was the whole lot. So I wasn't unhappy, and I'm more than happy now to see the back of it, to be honest, because of course, once the motorised ones come out with lights and a plug for your digital fitting, the value of the static ones and any that I'd motorised in the past will go for the floor. Like all our friends with their, cottage industry kits in the past, it will just disappear, won't it? So it's worked quite well for me because as I'm now retired, I don't really want to sit there anymore and do other people's trains for them. I'd rather do my own. So I'm quite happy. But I think it'll be certainly be a popular model. It seems that everyone you talk to, they've all pre-ordered, and I'm sure that Bachmann will pretty quickly go on to release the Silver 59 stock, and no doubt some of the variations that Frank tackled over the years. Actually, that reminds me, what I could do to tempt you with, if you're interested, is I managed to buy, there were two archives at EFE. One Frank owned and he kept at home, and another one he kept at the place in Ponders End. Well, Bachmann took on the archive at Ponders End. That's the bits that Frank didn't take out of it. But he kept one model of everything he ever did. So it was a pretty large archive. He did thousands of different finished models. And of course, he had all the masters as well. And the same applied to the tube trains. And very fortunately, because I was his, because I got on quite well with him, I still keep in touch with him now. He's happily retired. But I included in what I took off his hands were the masters of the tube models. And they're almost O scale. In fact, if you talk amongst yourselves for 5 minutes, I'll go and get them because I know where I've hidden them.
Oh, yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that when he did these masters, he's obviously tooled them up or done the masters in such a way that he could have gone on with the models he was doing and done the modified trains that had the alarms fitted. When they put the extra cabling in on the front. And he was going to do the bus red version of the 38, for example. He was going to do the modified 59 stock. So these ones I've got, in fact, some of the test samples they did in 00, they're one-offs because, of course, they've got the extra cabling and detail on the front. So talk amongst yourselves for 2 minutes. Sorry, I'll go and grab them. That'll whet your appetite.
Yeah.
Just bear with me.
I wonder whether you'll see more underground-based layouts as a consequence of this Bachmann announcement.
Possible, isn't it?
It all depends on where
really
they're stuck.
saw more Southern Electric when the EPB and the SEP came out.
Yeah.
It all depends if people buy it. All depends if it sells, I suppose, too.
Yeah.
But then again, look at the price of the S stock that Bachmann did about 4 years ago. Stuff that's going for like $1,000 each on eBay.
Yeah.
Well, they only ever did one batch of that. It's always been controlled through
London Transport Shop, the
Cantina,
museum shop.
Yeah.
You have to watch that museum shop website like a hawk, because a while back they were selling off the Metropolitan locos for nothing, like 30 quid each. Like even Hattons were 60 and 70 quid. Like they're literally giving them away. But that includes books and all that as well.
Yeah.
But for a long time, that was the only place where you could buy the design manual. Now everybody sells it, so capitalism has its ways.
Of course.
I mean, their stock, I think, is 100% commission.
Oh, yeah, it was, yeah.
To Bachmann, so I don't even think Bachmann have got there. After 18 or 24 months, we can chuck this out when we want to.
Yeah, but they failed to even sell the ones they've got because all the extra new numbers are just refinished.
Yeah.
In the same way that they do the limited edition bus every time the LT Museum has an open day, they issue a limited edition bus, but it's the same bus, just a few hundred have passed through someone's refinishing, basically.
Don't forget it's a business for them. They're not doing it out of the
Oh,
goodness
yeah.
of their hearts.
Right, time to crack on with the wiring, Paul.
Good idea.
But, I mean, seriously, thank you for making me do the talk, because it made me think about a load of stuff that I hadn't really thought about and plan a load of things. And having a plan is half the battle, isn't it?
Deadlines are helpful for
They
pushing
are.
forward, as long as they're not too much pressure.
Yeah.
But no, and I didn't say thank you very much for the presentation. That's
No
very
worries.
interesting and very professional, like your video.
Good. We like to keep high standards, right, Lydd? So,
It's too high standard. Next time, just lower it down a
yeah.
cogs. Need at least one derailment on a video of moving trains.
Lydd sets the benchmark for high standards on videos, really, doesn't it? So,
Oh, to a degree, yes. In a certain direction, yes.
Yeah. Where did that go? I think I just shoved it in somewhere. So, glue down details onto the layout or leave them removable?
Depends where they are in the layout and
It's
how much you value them.
what they are.
I can't be asked to keep taking them off. I think they're going to get glued down at some point.
Yeah, but if you lose them, will you be heartbroken or do you fuck it?
Nah, they're just like crates and stuff.
Oh no, that sort of stuff should be okay.
Depends how close it is to the edge of the layout, or if it's going to get bashed in transit.
I think the wheel sets might need gluing down onto the spare wheel sets. The
Just
wheel-
as well too.
The vehicles, maybe leave those unglued.
Now you can move them around, you see, you don't want them in the same place every time.
Yeah. The other thing I've been working on for Watley is, or John's away, is these little things here. I don't know if you can see that. It is
A chip of some
tiny
sort.
wee thing. It's £3 on eBay, and you can program it with some sounds. You just load up MP3s onto it. It's got a micro USB interface there.
All right.
It's got 16 megabytes storage on it, so it acts like a like an SD card when you plug it in. You put your MP3s on that, and then it's got a 5-volt input and it's got pins for a speaker and then pins for some buttons. And you can wire it up, so you press a button and it plays a sound. So the intention for that is for ambient sounds.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bother, guy. I'd say record basically wagon wheels gone over a joint, just a clunk clunk.
That's exactly what I've done. So on here, exactly that.
Yeah.
Wagon wheels going over a joint. Click clunk, click clunk, click clunk. So
Get those Tang Band O gauge ones, the ones that won't fit in the double O logos.
yes. Yeah. So I'll try and post some details of that. So that's another little micro project that I've almost got working. But you could have anything, right?
Get ambient music.
Good.
Get that's what I call 1990 or 1991. Stick that on.
Or some Brian Eno, nice ambient.
No, you don't want us all drifting off into space. That's the problem.
Let's have some birds chirping away in the background in the trees.
You could have like the shunters' voices as well, couldn't you? Sort of saying, "Move forward, hold on."
Yeah.
Stop it, you
Stop
muppet.
that fucking thing! Put the fucking brakes on there, you bollocks! Bang! And just ambient shunting sounds, but only when there's trains moving on that particular part. You could probably set up your detector so it triggers the sound.
There's so many birds down there. I quite like to have some bird noise on there too.
Yeah, I think it's worth it. Definitely worth it.
Quite nice.
I had to laugh though.
If you do that, Guy, there's a high likelihood your neighbouring operators, neighbouring layout owners will set fire to your layout.
Yeah.
Then, for God's sake.
Like, no, I told you the story, didn't I? There was a layout beside us at a show in Bangor in Northern Ireland a few years back. For some reason, he insisted every 3 minutes going through the startup sequence on all his 66s. So I politely said to him, "You might turn that down a bit, or do what Mick does, fade in the sound." He's like, "No." I was like, "No, I did it Mafia style." Okay, smiled, walked away. The next morning, it was terrible. Some really bad person had lifted up his engine shed, got the heaviest soldering iron they brought up with them, and basically soldered a load of brass strips across the lines inside the shed, put the shed back on, walked away and did nothing. I was like, "Oh, is your layout not working?" Now, see, I didn't say it to him because then he would have known it was us, but we were like, yeah, we asked you nicely. I mean, he asked us for a drill on the Friday and we gave it to him. No bother. There you go, give it back. But yeah, so good turns deserve another one. But no.
I'm never going to cross you, Ed.
No, you see, there's a sense way of doing it, Paul. I'd say, would you mind turning that down a bit? Yeah, no problem.
I know,
That's fine,
it's not right. It's not right.
And I mean,
the problem with DCC sound is it is phenomenally difficult to turn. Like, you've got to be messing around with programming CVs to turn the sound down.
No, but do you ever see what Mick does? Basically, when the train comes into the scenic section, it fades in already on full throttle or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't get the beep, beep, beep.
Yeah,
you don't get that.
That's the way most normal people operate a layout with sound.
But, but you see, this guy had fallen into the trap of a depot layout. Oh, look at me and all my sound locos, because I can't afford all the stock to go with them. So.
I remember one layout at Showcase that was like that. The last layout last time we were in the town hall, and it was in the
long hall.
It was in that long room at the back.
Yeah.
God, they left everything on all the time.
Is that the one with all the DRS logos?
Yeah.
Logos.
Yeah.
Oh, that what's it called? Ebsworth Street or so. And every time a loco stalled on one of the crossovers, it reset the whole thing.
The whole layout went down. They had no power districts.
Is that your man Ebsworth Street or something? Is that the name of it?
I'll have to look it up on.
I think it is, because it was the same up in Glasgow. It was like, I'm glad we're over the other side of the hall.
Yeah.
That wasn't the layout that you soldered the strips.
Nah, this is some weird guy up in Northern Ireland. Yeah, it is Greg Marshall, was right. I mean, he was, we did him a favour on the Friday. He'd somehow forgotten his drill that everybody brings with them. And then he broke the tool rule, which is give it back. If you borrow something, give it back. That's the only rule. And he didn't. But to go chasing for it. So I says, right, he's not in our good graces this weekend. So yeah. This is what you get being an experienced operator guy. Tales from the road,
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Paul will agree with that.
It'd be X-rated, I would imagine.
Well, you have the good stories and the bad stories.
I'd hope so, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm not going to keep saying it, but it's going to be all a bit different now in the next year or two. You're just not going to have as many shows.
No, we've got to see how it goes, haven't we? See how it develops.
Bit more of this.
I think so. As good as it is bringing people together, you just don't get the same buzz. So I won't say our season the Residence Bar later, chaps, till 3:30 in the morning or whatever.
Is John back yet? Is he? Where is he?
Oh, he's John. Oh, he is. Didn't see him.
Oh, he's back. Yeah.
I had to go deep in the tunnel. I do apologise. I'd repack them. You know, when you put something somewhere else, I didn't have a clue where they were. Anyway, I found some evidence to show you. These were the. I can't find everything I was going to show you, but when EFE first announced their models, they did some in like a porcelain. That I remember seeing these in the cabinets at Duxford, and these were just very basic samples, early day samples. There's not even any proper bogies attached to them, if you can see that. But these were, I remember being in the case, and I looked at them and thought, wow, they look decent models. But these were just made in a little set. There was 2 sets that Frank displayed very early on. This must have been 20 years ago, in 2001, because I think he released them in the end in 2002. But what I've got that's particularly interesting A lot of their masters were made in wood, but these appear to be resin. They're not quite O scale, but I don't know if you can see that all right. But they're basically obviously the large scale versions ready for the tooling, with the key that held it to the plastic plinth and the bogey arrangement and the coupling arrangement as well. So he did a centre car because he did two sets. He did the 38 stock and the 59 stock, but of course in model form the dimensions were almost the same. The 38 stocks were steel bodied and the 59s were aluminium bodied, but obviously there was some 20 years difference between the release of them in real life. But in model form, with using the same tool, which of course is what it's all about, he could produce both models. So in effect the body tooling was the same. So this is a trailer car of the well, it could be either. This is a trailer car, but this one's fitted with 38 stock bogies. And then he did another, essentially a trailer car, but it was a motor trailer car, which is that one, which was fitted with 59 stock bogies. So that gave him the two centre cars. And then for the driving cars, he did a 59 stock driving car. Now, if you notice, this one has got the extra cabling on the front for the alarm system that was fitted throughout the train, where you had 3 and 4 car sets coupled together. They obviously had to connect them. So this was repeated on one or two of his production 00 sets when they did a test shot. So it was always set up in advance for this version. But Frank quite rightly concentrated on the early ones first, because if he'd have released the current day version straight away, he probably would have sold less of them. And then you've got the bogey, which was a large version of the one that they eventually injection molded. So he injection molded the bogies with the different side frame detail. He injection molded this plate that glued underneath the chassis, which enabled them to do the underfloor detail. The chassis itself was die cast, and the chassis was obviously standard. And so the bogies and this base plate were injection molded. And then the bodies, as I say, were effectively the same, except that he obviously did a different cab end. So that's the 59, and here is the 38 stock.
Can I ask the obvious question? What was the point of producing them in that size as opposed to the size that they were released in?
What I gather is when they do tooling, they generally do the masters in a oversized, almost O scale for any model, because then they can obviously get more detail onto it, and they can obviously scale it down into all the different scales. Some of you will probably know more than I about this, but this is common practice apparently, especially in die casting.
You were in the old days when you did proper pattern making instead of 3D CAD. This is the process that you'd follow, presumably.
Yeah. I think nowadays, of course,
pantograph milling. I'm just about to pull up how Matchbox did it, which shows the process.
Well, that'd be interesting.
There's a nice British cafe about it.
What year is this from, John?
1962.
Wow.
I think I've seen it. Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Yes, I have seen it. Yeah, I have.
What they used to do before computers were used for everything.
Yeah, and having the bigger size means you have less risk of errors, or they're all minimised. Hang on, let me share it.
Let me get a drink. I'll be back in a second.
Is this on YouTube, John, this one?
This is on the British Pathé website.
Right. Okay.
Hang on, I need to share audio as well, don't I? Share screen, share computer sound, that one. Share.
This is a car-producing firm, a firm with the output of over 1 million vehicles a week. Fantastic figures. But they're used to them here, because ever since the company started, more than 250 million Matchbox models have come off the assembly line. In spite of what you might think, producing toy cars isn't child's play. It's a highly organized operation requiring similar skills to the production of the full-size car. After the design details have been settled, a carefully carved wooden model, every detail exact but 5 times the size of the intended miniature, gives the toolmaker the shape from which he cuts the steel die from which the models will come. Some of the die casting machines can produce about 7,000 sets a day, and here's just one. These rough castings will drop to a conveyor belt, which carries them to the next stage, known interestingly as rumbling and fettering. The castings are, of course, mixed up with a great deal of unwanted material. This is easily removed, and the waste goes back to the foundry, where it is remelted and used again. The firm only began operations just after the war. A couple of ex-servicemen pooled their gratuities and started making die castings for industry in an almost derelict hub. Most of the machines they designed themselves, so that one day when business was slack, they were able to experiment with a small model of the coronation coach. And they sold more than 1 million copies. Suddenly realizing the kind of market available, they concentrated on producing these perfectly detailed models. One good idea, 2 men, and millions of satisfied customers. The models are perfect in detail for the most critical collector, yet fun for the children. This is an industry where even the boss gets fun out of his work.
Wow, that's lovely, isn't it?
Wow.
Back when Britain was great.
How many people were working on those production lines?
Answers the question perfectly, doesn't it?
Pride.
I think those days are gone, obviously, because Frank had hundreds of wooden models in his archive, mainly of the commercial vehicles and buses that he did. There were hundreds of them. I know Frank took some of them, but I think he wanted to get rid of the most of it because they were filling his semi-detached house and liable to collapse, I should think, with the weight in the loft.
Plus, some of them are hardcore collectors, live for that stuff.
Yeah.
Pay big money for it too.
Yeah. Well, because I was only interested in the underground stuff, of course, I didn't pursue any of the other stuff. But he did a racing cars, some large scale ones, and some ships and some large scale buses, didn't he? He had when he went into administration, he had just short of £1 million at cost of stock in that warehouse. Madness. You know, that was, it was worth nothing effectively because most of it was stuff that he kept on re-liverying, putting new registration numbers or destinations on. And do you know how much he sold to Batman for?
Don't want to know.
Well, he already had a commercial arrangement with them because their reps were selling his products because, of course, Frank didn't have his own sales force. So he hated Batman. I get the impression I pick up in the model trade, in the toy trade, a lot of them hate each other, but he hated Graham Hubbard, I think, who was kind of running the show at the time. But he said the reality is that it's either going to be Batman or Hornby. And in the end, Hornby already had, obviously, have bought up all the other brands, hadn't they? Lima and so on. But Batman gave him £120,000. And they took everything. They took all the stock, which was, a bit. I suspect a lot of it's still locked in the containers up in Leicestershire, wherever they are, and they took the Collectors Club, the branding, the website. That's what they wanted. But of course, they wanted some of the tooling because I think they still got a brand, haven't they? EFE Rail, which
that's a bit different. But yeah, they bought the name basically.
Yeah.
EFE is a mashup, but we won't divert too far.
Okay, can we just have a chat, John? Have you got any more to do? It's the next
no, that's it.
We've got spare time if we want to move anything around or add anything. But